Mr. Seah and Peng.
Sir, first let me declare my interest as Group CEO of NTUC Enterprise. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is important to remember lessons when they are fresh, and I therefore congratulate the government for its decision to write and to publish this white paper, because it records our successes, our mistakes, our missteps, as well as the justifications of our key decisions. In leadership of human affairs, there is no do-over. There's only one chance to get it right. And this is why it is so important that when we get it wrong, we make sure that it happens only once, and we do it better the next time. That's not to say that we will not make mistakes, but let us make new ones and not repeat the ones of history. Only in this way can Singapore progress and emerge stronger from each crisis. That Singapore had weathered the storm is unmistakable, but the reasons we did so may be less clear. I count at least three, the third of which is often overlooked. First, our people. Second, our money. And third, sheer luck. We should not discount the role of luck, for only by acknowledging the role of luck can we keep ourselves from hubris and from underestimating the complexity, the ambiguity, and the extraordinariness of future events. The white paper holds many useful operational lessons that I am sure will stand us in good stead in time to come. The most valuable lesson to me, however, is a reminder of the importance of the human dimension. Here I want to pay tribute to all essential and frontline workers, from cleaners to delivery workers, to those working in healthcare, transport, education, social work, and yes, also supermarkets. Many of whom had toiled for many years and mostly taken for granted by all of us. I hope also that our appreciation to this group of workers that it does not subside now that this pandemic is over and that we are back to doors gone green. Indeed, the pandemic showed how important, how underrated, and how underappreciated they were, and how we need an overhaul of the way we organize our world, from wages to social and economic structures, from the way we live to the way we allocate resources. It is now a time to see that while praise and awards are good, equitable pay and respect for each other, for work, are better. One of my proudest moments was in the way we reacted in the early days of the pandemic, how we offered free healthcare to anyone struck by COVID, regardless of race, nationality, or means. How, being one of the first countries to obtain the vaccine, we prioritized according to need, offering the earliest doses to the elderly and the migrant workers living in dense quarters. I was also proud of the way we opened our hearts and our doors to the migrant workers. It was a mistake not to have anticipated the intensity of the outbreak in the dormitories. It meant that nearly half of the 300,000 workers living in dormitories had been infected by 2020. Sadly, 2 workers died. At the same time, there were many in the community who jumped in to help. I cite one example of NUS, who opened their hostels to migrant workers, housing hundreds of them within the halls of residence. Students were briefed about the COVID situation in the workers' dormitories and why they needed to share their hostels. Rather than fear of infection and resistance to strangers living in their midst, the students worked to make the workers feel welcome. Sports team conducted online morning PT every day. It's like NS times. Others held classes to teach them about financial scams. Still others recorded video messages to show their support. The human touch was abundantly evident. When doctors working on the ground at the dormitories, when they called for volunteer translators, students from different countries, India, China, Myanmar, Thailand, they all took turns to translate these instructions. When the workers finished their stay at the hostels, they were treated to a graduation ceremony where they took photos with the university mascots. In a real way, I feel our students too, they graduated too, and from a far higher ranked university than NUS. I also want to reflect on our darker moments. It was indeed confusing when we changed course. and took both too much and too little risk. Our safe distancing measures, gathering groups of 2, 5, 8, and then back to 2, these were a reflection of the dynamic nature of the pandemic. Reality was fast-moving, and so too was our response. The key was to explain and to communicate continuously and quickly. We may not have always succeeded, but the high trust that we had in each other was a key reason we managed some degree of calm and order. The people trusted that we were doing our best as a government, and the government trusted that people were doing their best to follow fast-changing rules and guidelines. The business community also played their part, and the whole Singaporean community also played their part. All came together, and together we reaped the returns of the trust, the faith that we had built over the years. Indeed, during the day when DORSCON Orange was declared, when Malaysia announced the movement control order, and when we announced our circuit breaker, these were pivotal moments where our trust and our faith and our bonds, these were all tested in full force. Wearing my NTUC Fair Price hat at that time, and working closely with government and media, we had to assuage genuine fears and anxieties of the general public, amongst many messages that supermarkets will remain open, that stocks are available, and if they are not, they are on the way. And at the same time, seeking understanding and support of the public to only buy what they need and not create their own stockpiles. Despite best efforts on both sides, however, there were times of genuine confusion, not to say fear or anger, over the application of the rules to eating places, coffee shops, which caused a lot of confusion and sometimes disputes. Businesses were quite badly affected too. I know, as our NTUC food fair and our kopitiam chains, they were also caught in this spiral. I did raise these issues at the time, but when emotions, when fears, when uncertainty runs high, and in the trade-off between lives and livelihoods, one would swing on the side of conservatism and safety. We made the right call to be cautious, but we must also be aware of the costs incurred. In a pandemic, no amount of reassurance and communications can eradicate the fear and anxiety that we face. At the same time, we need a healthy dose of agnosticism in the face of so much that we don't know. We recognize that an injunction against mask wearing was overdone. It was hubris to think we knew what was unknowable at that time. And here I want to acknowledge that it was plain good luck that we were not hit by a deep and severe spread during the no need for masks early days. And that when COVID hit us in full force later on, we already had our masks and we had our sanitizers. However, it was not luck that allowed us to restock our supermarket shelves overnight. After the onslaught of panic buying, it was not luck that enabled the government to inject money into our system without borrowing. It was also not luck that we got supplies of drugs, food, and vaccines. For a country that imports 90% of our food, we never once went hungry. All these were possible because of, you could say, plain, boring virtues. Very Singaporean things, like long-term planning, careful husbandry of reserves, technocratic, technical, and engineering capabilities during decades of peace and prosperity, hoarded for this one-time use. This is not just the domain of government. There are many other partners in the community who spent their reserves too. NTUC was one among many which did our part. In 2020, the NTUC Enterprise Group of Social Enterprises, we rolled out a 50 million package to provide holistic support for Singaporeans to cope with the pandemic. And in the following year, another 20 million was committed to help the community tide over the second year of pandemic. These initiatives have benefited the community by providing support to frontline workers, ensuring that public access to affordable essential goods and services, providing financial assistance to vulnerable groups, and supporting small businesses that have been affected by the pandemic. And also through our foundations, providing more support to the vulnerable groups, the VWOs, and charities. The work has certainly not ended because our world will never be the same. Let me give you a boring example in logistics. During this COVID-19 period, NTUC FairPrice, we expanded our warehouse capabilities to support additional storage requirements. During COVID, we had to adapt, and we successfully set up an alternative warehouse. We did this within 5 days. We converted a brick-and-mortar store to an online fulfillment center within 3 weeks, again to meet the surge in online orders. By 2021, FairPrice had set up our what we call a supply chain ops center. This was to enhance our supply chain capabilities and ensure we remain operational regardless of disruptions. More importantly, this ops center allows us to minimize out-of-stock scenarios because it functions as an early warning system. In fact, when the Suez Canal blockage incident happened in March 2021, FairPrice was aware before the international agencies reported on the news. This incident had affected a few vessels that were transporting some of the supplies and products that we had ordered. The near real-time alert had bought us precious time to execute our contingency plans, thus avoiding supply chain disruptions. Today, we are more agile. We have further diversified our sources of supply, covering over 100 countries, and we are constantly looking to strengthen our network of suppliers to avoid any over-reliance on any one source. So whilst we still carry a lot of eggs from Malaysia, we also have eggs from Australia, New Zealand, as well as certainly from our local farms. And over this COVID-19 period, we have added Spain, Ukraine, and Poland as additional source for eggs. And just last month, we added Brunei to the list of countries supplying eggs to us. The way we feed ourselves will not be the same. The way we live, the way we work will also be different. Telemedicine, work from home, online learning, the need for insurance. But there are other things which will remain the same. Resilience, unity, and a single-minded commitment to a joint future. These are endearing virtues that have always been a part of our DNA as a young country, form of hungry migrants. I said at the start that the most important lesson in the white paper is of the human dimension. It is a lesson of the mind, and one that is difficult to record in the document. A lesson that cannot be taught, but must be learned. We must see that our brightest moments in the whole pandemic came from the times when we recognized and when we respected our common humanity, and that our society is one which has an equality of respect and dignity for each one of us. We must learn, we must remember this lesson, because it is one that, as DPM Lawrence Wong has said, that will test us again. Sir, I support the motion.